So my measurement was off with this cross member. Pretty sure it's still an inch too tall. So I'm gonna take an inch out of it. I have my new welder, which I don't know if you guys can see. Y'all can see. It's a Lincoln Electric weld pack, and I'm waiting on their wire to show up as well. So I went to Harbor Freight and bought some Vulcan stuff. I got a good many years out of my Vivo Home cheap Amazon welder, but last time I was out here, it gave me issues. It died, and I don't want to blame it on, but I've never had issues until I put a spool of wire in that had the little blue guy on it. I don't want to throw names around, but like, some people say that they have really good luck with that. In my experience, I don't like it. That one time, I will not use it again. I never had an issue with that welder prior, and then throw that in and it dies on me. It's another cheap 120 flux cord, whatever, cheap. In the world of welders, it's not expensive, but like, to come out of my pocket, I don't like it, you know? So, what I'm gonna have to do here is probably take another inch out, like I said. And of course, I don't know where my freaking tape measure is. So I'm going to use a triangle and figure this out as best as possible. I got the measurements, and they're all measuring about 2.5 inches, which is roughly where I'm sitting with this one. So I really don't know what to do with that information. The only thing I could figure is that the tail shaft to the bottom of where the mount bolts to is a different dimension, which here I'm measuring roughly 4 inches on this transmission. I have a four-wheel drive sitting here. And so I don't know. Really stumped right now, because like I thought for sure that there was a difference in dimensions and that something was up. But it don't seem like that's the case now. So if that's not the case, I need to measure and confirm the difference between that transmission, if there is a difference in height. And until I do that, I can't do anything, so this is pretty much a wasted trip out here. Love to see it. I don't know what to do with this, because I'm probably going to take this back in and then find out that the measurement is different than 4 inches, and then have to run back out here and make adjustments to that 4 inches. But until I measure it, I won't know what that measurement is. And like, on the small chance that it is the same, then I don't really know what to do here. And like, I don't even want to like weld up the last couple spots that I wanted to weld before, because if it does change, then I'm gonna have to cut it all out anyways. So like, I'm really in a dilemma here. I don't know what to do. I guess run back in and measure it. That's really seems to be the only option here. But in other news, one of the things that I forgot before, the flywheel bolts, they're literally sitting out here in a box. Like, I forgot that I even bought them ahead of time. They ended up out here in a box. So I spent running all over the one day, and they were out here. So instead of just remembering that I needed those at the apartment and not here, I kind of screwed myself on that one. So make sure you have all the stuff that you need in one place before you start this, because otherwise you're going to be running all over like me. So as it turns out, a few things. So I lined the holes up in the frame. These holes that I drilled are a little bit off. They need to be up about a 1/2 inch for the transmission mount to sit on this back portion of this guy, which I'm fine with. It doesn't really, I don't really care. Like, it doesn't matter to me. There's still going to be 4 bolts going through it. I cannot see something happen that the transmission wants to twist one way or the other that will bend or break anything, so I'm not worried about it. But what I do have to do, I measured the transmission mount, the one that's sitting over there in my 4-wheel drive, because right now the cross members are measuring the same from a 4-wheel drive to this thing. Issue is, the one over there, the mount, measures about an inch difference. Now, I don't know if that inch is because the mount is wore out, or if they're just supposed to measure an inch difference. I don't know why there's an inch difference, but there is. That one measures like about 2 inches, like almost under 2 inches, and the mount that I'm trying to put in here currently is measuring like just under 3 inches, so almost an inch difference. And then how I measured the transmission, where it needs to mount out at the shop with the 4-wheel drive, that's a different transmission than what's in the truck that I'm measuring. But regardless, because the 4-wheel drive cross member would be similar, how do I want to put this? From the output shaft to where it needs to mount, on that one I measured 4 inches. On this one, the 2-wheel drive, I'm measuring 4.5 inches. So I'm probably going to take the mount out with me tomorrow to the shop to confirm that the mounts on that one are different, because it should fit a normal 4-wheel drive cross member. But what I'm going to do for this, because I measured it approximately where the transmission needs to sit, that's about where it is, where it's roughly level, and there's not much weight of the engine and everything being lifted currently. So it's about where it needs to sit, and I've got about 1.5 inches, give or take, that's there. Like I said, the transmission mount is about 3 inches. I expect it to smush about, like, I don't know, 1/8 inch, but like that's still almost 1.5 inches. With the difference in the transmission and then the mount, that's another 1.5 inches. So 3 inches will give us the room that we need for that mount. So I'm figuring we take out 1.5 inches of this guy, and then, like I said, weld some plate in diagonally here to reinforce it. But yeah, I think after I do 1.5 inches, we'll be sitting perfect. But just in case, I'm gonna take the 1.5 inches, just do it, and then I'm going to bring some extra plate so that if I need to space it, if it's causing anything funny, it's not sitting high enough, I can do that. But I think the 1.5 inches is going to be perfect for where we need it to be, and I don't think I'm going to have any issues. So, alright, moment of truth here. If you can see that, I don't know how well it's coming up in the frame. Took another 1.5 inches out of the cross member so that it would fit, and it looks like it's fitting exactly how it needs to, with that transmission mount measuring just under 3 inches. So put that under there, got the measurement that I thought I need from where I picked the transmission up till everything is like looking level, but before it starts picking the engine up with it and starts picking up like the suspension of the whole vehicle. And from that point, right before it starts picking everything else up, is where I measured the mount to get this mounted up. So I cut it back down, I welded the plate in there. I had to move the holes back towards closer to the camera on the cross member to get the mount to go where it needs to, so that it's further back rather than centered. And so I welded the plate on top of those rails running horizontally, or like parallel, or not parallel, perpendicularly to the frame. And then where it's sitting down in, I welded 2 small pieces of plate in there as well to hopefully add some extra rigidity. So we're gonna see when I let the weight of this thing down how it looks. So I'm gonna do that right now. promising. Doesn't look like anything flexed in the way it's not supposed to. I don't see what I'm looking for is to try to see if it bowed at all, which I don't think it did. So I think we're okay. Because with this being as thin as it is, I think with that plate being welded in there that it's okay. But if I find out that it's not, at some point in the future, I'm probably going to take some pieces and put it going this way, parallel with the frame in different spots. Try to give it some extra strength, but I think it's okay. These are a bitch to get to with it on the being so close to the thing. The bolts that I have are measure 17 mil to fit into the holes on the transmission. I don't know if these ones are too long. They might be, so I might have to get different hardware, but they'll work for the moment being. Alright, so that guy's pretty much bolted down. The hardware to go into the transmission, like I said, it's probably going to be too long. It's a little too long. Not a big deal right now. Everything else there is bolted up and good. So that's looking good. What's not looking good is what I wondered about. Drive shaft. So this side is good. Like this side stays the same because it's what was on this truck. I bolted that end back up so it's good ready. However, from the transmission back to the like little U piece that holds it up to where it bolts into the cross member here, it's too long. So I don't know. I'm gonna measure, get under the other truck and measure a four-wheel drive shaft and see if it's close to what I need. But I think I'm gonna have to see if I can source a drive shaft because the one that I have is too long. So either my options are kind of limited. They really are. Find another drive shaft that will work, or I'm gonna have to try to cut down the one that I have. So update on the drive shaft here. The second half that was like original to this truck is perfect. It's gonna work just fine. Still bolted up. I didn't do anything with it. But this guy, where that is supposed to connect into this shaft and then this is supposed to bolt to the cross member, this is the right length. So like this drive shaft and how it mates, this one is fine. This is the one that came off of the cab chassis. So like the shaft is an inch longer to the end of this, but it still works compared to the other one. So that is great. This part is going to work even though it's an inch longer. It still fits. It still functions how it needs to. The predicament is from this guy because it coming out of a 3500 HD. The not the output shaft, the yoke where the drive shaft bolts on, the U-joints are different, and I cannot find a combination U-joint of the dimensions that I need, so I'm gonna have to use this drive shaft, which is fine. I'm gonna have to modify one either way. Both are too long. This one is measuring 2.5 to the center of the mount, that it's too long. So 2.5 inches, and it puts me in the center of the mount. The mount where the bolts are, they're not just solid holes, they're slots, so there's a little bit of front to back play so that it's not 100% guaranteed, like it's not a 100% perfect thing. There's a little bit of room there to play. So 2.5 inches putting me in the center of the mount should be perfect. That if I take exactly 2.5 inches, which I'm going to measure for the blade width of the chops on everything, which should be, I think, an 1/8 inch. So even with that taken into account, we take 2.5 inches off this, re-weld it up, and that should put us exactly where we need to be. The fun part is the fact that I have to go back out to the shop to cut and weld something else. The cross member wasn't it. We also have to do a drive shaft, which I've never done. I've never done a cross member, but like I've welded other things, all other plate steel, so not a big deal. But a drive shaft, this is a first for me, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. If you're gonna do the swap, if you're not gonna listen to, you know, don't buy one, or if you're not gonna buy one that has it in, or you have a truck that you want to do it to already, absolutely positively find as close to a truck as you can that's like identical to yours. Otherwise you're gonna have to modify a bunch of stuff and stuff that you're not gonna find out you gotta do till you're trying to get it together. So I mean, or the third option is plan for it to take you a while. That is also an option. Trying to get some decent lighting here, get it to focus. So I shortened the drive shaft. Obviously you can see that this half of it is on here. I just went to O'Reilly's and got some new U-joint straps because mine are kind of grody, old and gross. So you should be the right stuff here. But basically, in order to shorten this thing, that end that's closest, the U-joint down there, what I had to do, I put it in the, alright, whatever, speaker. What the hell are you throwing out there? I ain't restarting shit. But you put that end in, and then I measured from this mount back here, which you can barely see where my hand is. It was back this way. Basically, I measured about 2.5 inches from the outside of this mount to, or this side of this mount to exactly here. Is measuring about 2.5 inches. So it gave me a little bit of room to play here, because like these slide, so like it didn't have to be perfect. But obviously we want it close-ish. That's in there loosely right now, so that I can get this half bolted up. But I had to shorten it about 2.5 inches. So what you do when that is the case, like I said, you start at that end up there. There is a seam that goes the whole way around, and so you have to cut that weld. And then I cut mine a little bit deep. There's just a little piece, not like little, that gets pounded into the end of the shaft. You'll see when you open it up. But you want to be careful not to cut too far into that, because you can like damage that beyond repair if you cut too deep. So you want to be careful there. Mine was being stubborn, didn't want to come out, so I made the initial cut around the weld, and then because it still wouldn't come out, what I do is I measured the 2.5 that I needed, like basically where my finger would be. Obviously it's already done, but I just made the cut there with the chop saw, make sure the chop saw was as square as I could possibly get it, make sure this was as square as I could get it. And then once that was separated from it, what I did was I basically cut a relief cut in it, like a slit. I cut 2 of them. One was far enough up that it was the whole way off. And then what I did from there, since I had 2, the piece in the middle of the 2 cuts, I grabbed with a set of pliers and just started wrenching on it, and eventually it popped right free. Then pound that back into the shaft. Obviously I painted it and made it look pretty, and I welded it back up. You want to make sure that the key on the spline part of the shaft, which is the part that is essentially 3 splines together. There's a piece that goes in the center that helps you line up the drive shaft and everything into the second piece. Unless you're going to do a 1-piece drive shaft, in which case disregard that part. But anyhow, that key you want to make sure is lined up with one of these ears, is what I'm being told. So one of these is directly in line with the key when I weld it, or as close to. And you go around it once you pound that back in, which I had a rubber mallet out there, wasn't having it, so I had to actually get a woodworking hammer and beat it into place. But slowly tack around the outside until it's like not gonna move on you, because you don't want that to be off center, I guess. You don't want it to warp and bend and do a bunch of stupid stuff, because then you'll need to get it balanced to not have vibration in the drive line and like wear out U-joints prematurely, which I don't know if mine's gonna need it yet or not. We'll find out once I get it running and driving, but for now we gotta put it in and just hope for the best. So like I said, I got my new caps here and all new hardware and junk, so that is sweet instead of reusing old garbage that look like junk. And I got these at O'Reilly's. It was like $9, so I think it was well worth it. But I'm gonna get those bolted in up there, hold the drive shaft in. I mean, it's already kind of holding itself in place, But get those bolted up, get this bolted up, and then we'll move right along. Alright, so I routed my funnel down through the floor and into the transmission. Everything online is kind of conflicting, but the general consensus is like 4 quarts or maybe a little more. This bottle is exactly 4 quarts, so that's what I'm going to put in. But as you can see, it's running slow as shit. That's why I routed this up through the floor so that I don't have to hold it. It'll do its thing. But it's going to take forever to fill it. Otherwise, the drive shaft is on, the transmission is 100% bolted in, the slave cylinder and the master cylinder are in. They need bled though. So like people were saying, the firewall does flex a little bit from pushing the pedal in, but as long as the clutch is bled and works fine, I'm not going to worry about that, honestly. So we'll see once we get it running and driving, but right now I'm just filling the oil. So that's a little update here. Gotta fill the oil and bleed the clutch, and then she'll be ready to drive. But I don't have much longer till I gotta leave for work, and it's supposed to rain all weekend, so get back to it when I get back to it, I guess.